I'm Katie Hacker, your host for Beads, Baubles and Jewels. Each week, we're featuring one designer with a modern take on traditional techniques. Today is no exception as we meet author Lisa Niven Kelly. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. And we're talking all about making projects that you can pass on and create your own heirlooms. And this is something you could do today, but you'll have it forever.
For sure, yeah. And this is a great way to stamp out sentiments or people's names, and that can last forever.
Definitely. And these are beautiful bracelets.
Thanks.
So, but you could use these stamping techniques on anything that you're doing.
Yeah, a lot of jewelry, personalized jewelry. It's very popular.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so what do we need to get started?
Well, for stamping, I'm just going to give you a quick lesson. You need to have a bench block to put your metal on and a nice 1-pound hammer. I prefer the brass head mallet, and some letter and design stamps, and then the metal that you're going to be stamping on.
All right.
You want to make sure your bench block is on a really stable table with nothing underneath, with the exception of something like this, which is a sandbag or something filled with steel shot, because you need that hard resistance. Otherwise, you get a shadowed look.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it also deadens the sound a little bit, right? When
It
you're
does
hammering?
help, yeah. It can be a little loud.
Yeah.
It can be a little painful. So for this, I'm just going to practice. I've just been working on the word strength here. You can work on a piece of practice copper flat metal or sheet metal. And just take some time and make sure that you practice before you get started in your sterling. So hold it really straight and one whack. There I have the letter M. Now when you're practicing, just take your time and first work on making sure that you're getting a nice, decent impression like I have there. If it's too light, it's not gonna hold up the darkening that you're gonna put in there. And if it's too heavy, it's just gonna sometimes be more deep than the rest of your letters, or it's going to catch the edge of that and
kind of make sure metal start to bend in a
yeah,
little bit too.
Yeah, and it won't work out for you. So just practice on whatever you have and make sure that you practice before, like I said, you move into the sterling, because there's no backspace or whiteout. So if you make a mistake, you can't file it away or anything. So every time that I start, I always practice first. Even, you know, if I've done a little bit of stamping in my life, I still do.
Well, you're a pro. That's
but you still, especially with the design stamps, because design stamps, you got to think of, you're not removing the metal, you're just moving it. So the more design to the stamp, the more you have to be very accurate with it. And there's just a little basic spiral. So the more design that you have on the stamp, more practice you need.
And you're thinking about placement too, right? When you're practicing, kind of lining up where, do you always start in the middle?
Yeah, well, let's move on to the cuff. That's a great question. So for what we're doing today, the stamped cuff, you want to start in the middle of your cuff with the middle of your words or word. So in this case, we're doing the word strength. So I wrote out all the letters and I put a little number above each one so I know the center of my words. Right, yeah. So on this guy, for measuring for this cuff, you want to measure your wrist exactly right around here and then subtract a ½ inch. And that works out that after you shape the cuff, it fits perfect on your wrist with a little bit of opening.
So that you can put it on and take it off easily without bending it?
Yeah, yeah. And with cuffs, they kind of fit anyone. Like a 6-inch, you can just pinch it in a little bit or stretch it out. So my wrist is 6 inches, so I cut my metal at 5.5. And I've started already stamping the word strength. So now I would move into my G. And some stamps have a little indicator on here so you know where to put your thumb so that your letter faces the right way. Minor detail.
Oh, that's an important one.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna line that up. And there I have my G.
And what about spacing side to side then?
So it's a little tricky. Sometimes, let's move back to the copper so I can show you. And again, that's something you're gonna wanna practice in your sheet metal. You can draw a line with a Sharpie and pretend that that's the bottom of your cuff metal, or put some tape to help line up your letters. But for me, what I do is I kind of look at the reflection as the stamp comes down.
Oh.
It's kind of hard for you to see here, maybe the lighting above you, but you can see the reflection come down, and then you tip it up and then give it a whack. So left to right, that seems to work. Up and down, it's a little tougher, and it all depends on the quality of your stamps. Because if you have a good quality stamp, you can line up the stamp, but that's not always the case. So quality matters for sure. So back to this here, the magic here, I have stamped the whole thing out, the word strength, and I put a design stamp on either side.
I like that a lot.
So as long as you have the same design stamp on either side, you don't have to worry about that when you're writing it out here. because it's just going to balance when once you get your words centered.
Okay.
So the next thing we need to do with the cuff is add oxidation or black to the grooves, so that makes it really stand out.
Okay.
And you can do that with your proper oxidizing solutions like silver black or liver of sulfur, but I'm just going to do it the easy way with a permanent pen. And this lasts okay. You might want to seal it afterwards, but it works really well. And I'm just going to make a big mess here and make sure it gets down in all the grooves.
If you were sealing it afterward, what would you use?
I would use like Renaissance wax or maybe a spray sealant.
Okay.
And that works especially well on the copper. Okay, so there's my big mess. It's going to look just like that if you had used a different oxidizing solution. And I'm going to come in, this is a Pro Polish pad. It's got a micro abrasive in it and a polishing solution. So it does the job of like steel wool and a polished cloth and less mess than steel wool. And you can see right there, it just leaves it down in the grooves.
Yeah, so you've got your color that really highlights the word.
Yeah, so it makes it easier to read.
Definitely.
So you can do that before or after shaping. I just find it's easier to do when it's straight. So now we're going to need to clean up the ends. And I already did one side here. And you're going to want to trim. Let's get rid of this for now.
Sure.
How about that? We're going to want to trim the ends. This one's already been done. You can see that. So out here, instead of filing that to half round, I'm just going to go ahead and trim the ends because it's less work. Remember,
so you can save yourself a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I like the idea behind this project that you are not using a ton of heavy tools. So you could take this with you. You know, if you're a weekend away, you could just take everything along. It's very portable.
And that's what's great about this project. Throw it in a bag, you're on the go. When we start shaping, you'll see especially why that's fun instead of using a really heavy bracelet mandrel, which are very heavy and quite expensive too.
That's right.
So I've trimmed the corners off. I'm going to use just a heavy file now and work on rounding that.
Yeah, so you're really taking off anything that would cause abrasion on a person's skin there.
I'm making it round and making it not painful, which is sort of important.
Yeah, we want our jewelry to be really comfortable.
So this heavy file does a great job because it goes fast. Now you move on to a sandpaper. I just like to use a salon board and smooth this out here. And then it's really, really soft and nice and shiny too.
Well, and that's what's wonderful about working with sterling. You can really make it feel nice.
Yeah, exactly. So now nothing painful there, and it's time to shape.
All right.
Now these are the bracelet bending pliers. You can see they have a little groove, a little shape there, and we're just gonna come in, start anywhere on the bracelet, and just kind of bite away at it. And really, don't be gentle. Because think about the fact, if I'm squeezing really hard on this, it's kind of like hitting it on either side with a plastic mallet, which is just going to harden the metal and set it. So it's going to stay put. Because in this cuff, we don't want it to get out of shape. So this is going to shape it to kind of like a big open C.
Right.
And now we're going to grab the end and then do the rest with my hand. Just bring it a little bit on one side.
So just bending it even more oval still.
Just more of the wrist shape. And be gentle. Be gentle, don't just tweak it. But this metal I'm using is sterling again, and I think this is 5 millimeters by 1, so it's thick enough. You don't want to use something really thin.
Okay, so this can really stand up to your stamping and the bending.
Yeah.
And there you go.
I know, look at that, it's great.
Quick. Yeah, now there's some other ways that you can embellish these too.
Yeah, if you wanted to add holes to this, with the thick metal, a hole punch plier doesn't quite work, so you'd want to use something like a screw down hole punch.
All right, so that you could attach a clasp and some beaded ends here.
Yeah, in this case, I put some holes on and I wire wrapped on some beads to make it more of a bangle.
Yeah.
And then over here, we riveted on a blank.
That's really pretty too, and that gives it a really vintage look.
Yeah, so you can do whatever you want. Another idea is to put a hole like maybe right here and hang a charm that says something.
Yeah, especially if you have somebody's name, you could put their birthstone, or you could add a
hang
color.
A little bead, perfect, yep.
Ideal.
Yeah.
All right, and I noticed that you have one of your bracelets in copper over here too, so it doesn't, you're not limited to working with sterling in this type of project.
Right, so with the copper one, a lot of people like copper, it's very popular, but on this one I wanted to point out we didn't even put words on it. We just textured it with all kinds of design stamps.
It looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are everyday wear too.
And you can just get crazy with it and personalize it to your own heart's content.
All right, well thank you. These are some really great tips for stamping.
Yeah, it's
and
fun.
I love the idea that this is something that you'll wear all the time and keep it forever, even pass it on.